So good afternoon, everyone. As Ian mentioned, I'm a solutions architect with Clear Insight, and I'll be taking you through a demo of a few of the budgeting, forecasting, financial reporting, and analytics capabilities of some of IBM's analytics tools. We'll start by taking a look at TM1 Applications, which you can see here. It allows you to manage the states of particular regions, accounts, products, etc. of the business, depending on what sort of approval hierarchy you've defined. In this case, we're going to check out and edit a particular region in the corporate PM workflow. It's a good place to start, as this is where any contributors to your budget would begin. So first off, I guess we'll take a look at, we'll start at the bottom here and take a look at Canada as a for instance. You'll notice that each of the nodes beneath Canada is locked. So you can see here there's a status for each node, and then beyond that you've got a number of other pieces of information above. So each of these nodes is in a state of locked. These are your possible permissions, so you can view, edit, submit, or reject. In my case, I'm logged in as administrator, so I have all of these rights. If you were to log in as a different user, you may only be able to submit, view, edit, and submit. You wouldn't have rejection abilities. And in other cases, you may not even be able to submit. Depends on your level of permission. So as I mentioned, Canada's locked down, so it's been submitted for approval. So now the next level would be whoever the approver is to either approve or reject these particular nodes. So moving on, we'll take a look at, for instance, Illinois. You can see that Illinois has a different status. It's set to reserved. This means that someone has actually submitted it, so that option is no longer available. So basically at this time it can be released for re-editing. It's not yet available for rejection because it hasn't been fully submitted by the user. And you can see as well that the owner in this case is the PM rather than the administrator. So moving on from there, we're going to take out and do some work with Massachusetts. So in order to do that, I just right-click and I say Open Application TM1 Web. Okay, so now you can see here we've got a number of tabs across the top. Generally, you might start on this particular sheet if you weren't familiar with the system and what your budgeting process is. We'll not be covering all of these things today, but as you can see at the bottom, there's an introduction, there's instructions for the individual, there are tasks that are laid out, and there's a status of the overall project. Excuse me. At this time, if I were to click Start Now, you'll notice that nothing happens. This is because we actually need to take ownership over this node. So in order to do that, we would click up here and we can take ownership. So now that we have ownership, excuse me, I can click the Start node, and you'll see that it's brought us over to the Task tab. And in the Task tab, it gives a status. So some tasks are in progress, while others are completed, others aren't started. And then moving on to the Status tab, it gives you kind of more of an overall picture of what's happening. So moving down into the P&L, which is up here, this is where we'll start. And actually, before I move on, just so you're aware, we'll take a look back at our application web. So you can see now that Massachusetts status has changed. So we're now in a reserved state and it's being edited. So rather, unlike Georgia or Illinois that I showed you earlier, it's currently in an edit mode. So someone has it open and someone's working on it, whereas for the reserved node, someone has saved their data, but they haven't fully submitted it into the system for review. So we'll head back over. So here we are in the P&L. It looks like I've got two of these open. Excuse me a moment. There we go. Oh, Excuse me again. Let's reopen that. So this particular tab in the P&L shows us a target variance. So as you can see, we're comparing prior actuals to the current budget. Our target for the year, for the budget for the year, or the actuals, it's in the middle here. And we've provided the variance and then as well a variance percentage. So now if we take a look down the side, we can actually open up the account. So you can see beneath each larger account, we have a breakdown of the accounts underneath. And they can expand and collapse as you wish. So in addition, it's important to notice at the top here that we've got options. So if we open the organization, in this particular case, as the administrator, I only have currently checked out Massachusetts. I haven't checked out anything else. So I don't see any other options here. And then if we come over, right now we only have local and base currency. There's option to expand to as many currencies as you would like within the system. And it's very important to note that you can switch between years at any point in time. So for now we're going to stick with 2015. And we're also just going to look at the full year because we're going to do some spreading and some data entry, and it's much quicker if we stick with the full year. So now moving on from here, we can take a look at the PL tab. In this tab there's a breakdown of the selected year by quarter, as you can see at the top. And then at the bottom you're provided with a stacked bar chart. So if anything changes, you can see the changes that will occur in this bar chart. But for now we're just going to move on. I'll show you that later. We're going to take a look at the forecast tab. The forecast tab provides an outlook of the forecast for each year. So again, we're in 2015 and our forecast period is actually May. So at this point you can see that we only really have actuals, and they're noted at the top here by the A up until April. Beyond that we're looking at forecast numbers. So as each month progresses, next month when the actuals come in for May, they would appear here. This will flip over and then you'll only see forecast until the end of the year. So now we're going to take a look at how data flows between operating expenses and P&L. So I'll come over to the operating expense report. So we're going to drill down a little bit here because we don't want to enter data at the highest level for the office expenses, as a for instance, or for travel. So now what we can do is enter data manually. So if you wanted to put in a few values, and you'll notice right away that these new values have changed as well as the other values being affected. So the color changes to blue to indicate that you've made a change, and any totals, so for the year at the office expense roll up, and then at the total operating expense level, you're going to see blue in those areas. Now if we want to go back to the P&L, we can also see that those changes have come through into the P&L. So if we expand office expense, you can see the breakdown of where that occurred, and then everything once again rolls up, but each roll up is indicated to have changed. So now we'll head back to the OPEX sheet. So now we can hit the Save button, which is up here. This will actually commit your changes. So once we do this, everything will go back to black, which also will occur in the P&L. So now I'm going to show you a few useful spreading options because they're a lot faster than entering individual numbers. Spreading allows us to quickly fill numbers in with just a few specifications. So we're going to start with the equal spread. So if we click once again on our office supplies, and we'll right-click, and you'll notice there's a data spread option. Beneath data spread, because I've clicked on a leaf item, which is January for office supplies, rather than the year item, you'll notice that a few of these are unavailable. So for now, we're going to do the equal spread. So Let's just enter, say, 6,500. Then we have to choose which way we would like to extend, because it is possible you could be in the middle of a year and you can go right or left. It's up to you. In this case, I'm going to go right and extend for the entire year. I should have also noted, my apologies, before we move forward. It's also possible to do an add or subtract. So if I decided, as if for instance, I wanted to take 10 off, I'll subtract, and then I'll move to the right and I'll apply. Sorry, I think I entered 1, pardon me. In that case, everything will reduce by whatever value you happen to enter. So the repeat spread will work similarly, and this is a good point to illustrate. So if, for instance, starting in April and going forward, we wanted to change to something else, we would choose a repeat, and we can say it's a little bit more heading in towards the end of the year, and again we'll replace. So you can see now that everything has changed heading from April through December. So this is a great time to illustrate a few helpful toolbar items. There are undo and redo levels available here. So I can undo my last change. So you'll see everything moved back as it was before I did the repeat. And I can even move back again until we have no changes. But in this case, we like what we've done. So we'll put everything back as it was. So now we'll take a look at something a little more complex. It's the relative proportional spread, which will spread values to the leaves of the consolidation proportional to the leaves of a reference cell. So in this particular case, we're going to fill in entertainment, but we're going to use hotel as the example. In this case, you can see there's a pattern of sorts here. So the first 3 months are at 10,000, then we've got several months at 12, and then the final 3 months will change up again with December ending lower than any of the other months. So in order to do this, this time we need to click on the consolidation. So we want the whole year. So we'll right-click, do a data spread, and we're going to pick relative proportional spread. You notice there are a number of other options here. You can even clear an entire row if you wish. But there are many others, such as percentage changes and growths and straight lines. But we're just going to take a look at this one for now. So now you're going to come up with a dialog, and this dialog is basically asking you what your reference is. So in our case, we've decided we're going to use hotel as our reference account. So we'll come and find the hotel, and there we see the change. We'll hit select, and at this point we want to change the value across the board. So we're just going to enter 5,000. Once again, I think we're just going to do replace, and so we'll apply. Perfect. So now you can see that we've got 3 months that matches the pattern between the hotel. So now moving on, we'll look at the report tab. As you can see, again, similarly, we've got the same sort of changed values, and then in addition, we've got the changes below in the chart. We can see that the spreading from the spread appears in blue here as well. I'll now commit the data so that everything's turning to black, and we're going to move on to the revenue web sheet. So if we start on the Product Admin tab, we can see a graph of the current situation for this particular product, the 3G 64 gigabyte smartphones, and if we change the comparable product, the graph will also change. So we see an adjustment that immediately occurs. So in our case, we're going to add a new product. So if we come over here, we say 4G 64 gigabyte. And we want it in 4G smartphones. I'm going to give it a value of 3,500 as the unit forecast. And we'll stay starting in January. You can also see there are a number of other parents available in this list, but we'll stick with 4G. So now we'll click Add Product. And we can see that a new product has been added. So now moving on, in the unit forecast, you're actually able to change a few numbers if you wish. You can see that this is the 3,500 we initially entered. Can change this as we wish, and they will stay and they will update. Again, spreading methods are available in the same way. So now if we head over to channel detail, you can see once again that we've got the same sort of numbers that have come across, but now we've got a few more options. So here, if we wanted to do a spread, we can do a spread across internet. And likewise with distribution. And now you can see the graphs below will update as you change values here. You'll see the graph update. So now you can see that April has gone up significantly. Oh, excuse me a moment. So we'll move over to margin detail. Again, it's another report where you can see the differences between each channel. And again, by quarter. It's also very possible as well to switch between each of your versions if you want to view the report in different versions. And then finally, we'll take a look at the report itself. The product unit forecast report provides an overall picture for the year broken down by quarter in larger groupings. So you can see trends for individual product groups across the year and their corresponding quarterly values. And then we can see the graphs at the bottom once again. So similarly, if we move on, we can also make adjustments to employees. As if, for instance, here I may want to change the merit percentage or the salary for a particular employee. So if I change this as if, for instance, to 7%, and then I can drill into the details for each of these employees. In this particular case, if we wanted to look at Gretchen Davis, we can see all the changes have been reflected. In addition, we have allocations, so we can derive from these allocations how much a benefit rate may be. So if we change this to say, I think, oops, 13%, oops, and come back into employees, into the details, and we see it reflected. So now looking at the reporting tab, once again we see something similar to what we saw in revenue, where you'll see graphs for individual account types, so salary and bonus, so benefits versus salary versus employer taxes. And then we even have an FTE graph here at the bottom to give you a sampling of, how many FTEs you have per month. So now we can give an example, perhaps, of a sandbox, which is a very helpful aspect of TM1. Since we've saved everything here, I now want to build myself a sandbox where I can play with the numbers as I wish. We'll open up this one. Oh. I'll create a new one. So now I'd like to see how this might be reflected as a change. But now if I head back to the default sandbox, I can see that I still have my $500 that I'd entered initially. If I want, I can go into my new sandbox and submit the value. This will then push that value into the default sandbox. So now, moving on, we'll take a look quickly at the Excel interface that Ian alluded to earlier. This, for example, is where we built the P&L variance to target. And as you can see, it's all options in Excel, but now we have an additional tab to help interface with TM1. Additionally, we also have the ability to open up ETL processes that allow us to push data either from ODBC sources, so you just indicate your data source, username and password, and then the appropriate query depending on what your data source is. So moving on from here, take a look at some of our dashboards. So this one in particular starts out with a welcome page. Off of these you can actually run Report Studio reports. As if, for instance, this report is giving an alert about Massachusetts. It is also possible to do drill downs on these reports, so you can go into various areas of the report. Moving back into the home page, however, we see that we've got many options. So we've got KPIs here, which we can actually also do drill down on. And this applies again to financials, where you have a number of options. And as you can see, there are many, many options for your visualizations. You have the capability to drill down on each of these, and then you can also drill back up or undo a drill down. So moving back, I'll show you one more great report. This report's especially interesting because you can see that each widget, once you drill down, updates accordingly. So now you can see that we've drilled down into BI for IT, and then each of those can be viewed individually, and they can be moved, as you can see. So I think, Ian,